Donna Muller, the president and founder of Long Island Women in Tech. Thank you all for coming today. I have lots of thanks to give, and I'm probably going to mess that up. So I'm going to do that at the end. But for now, before we get started with the panel, we have a great guest with Nada Anid. She's going to be coming up and talking a bit to us about the subject that we're talking about today, Demystifying DevOps, and she's going to give us an introduction to how that ties into NYIT. Nada Anid is the Vice President for Strategic Communications and External Affairs at NYIT, and I'm sorry, New York Tech, because they rebranded recently, and I'm totally messing up their brand right now. She also served as the first female dean of the NYIT School of Engineering and Computer Sciences since 2009. As dean, she spearheaded the creation of NYIT's National Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense Education. And I know a bunch of you in the room are alumni that probably went through that same program. She's an author of the book, The Internet of Women, Accelerating Culture Change, which is definitely on my Amazon wish list for this holiday season. And she also has launched the Women's Corporate Council and is a group, which is a group of female leaders whose goal is to empower and inspire others within the NYIT community and beyond. And Nada, would you come up and give us a little bit about you? I'm sure you could do yourself more justice than I have. Thank you so much.
Welcome everyone, and let's see who is a graduate of New York Tech. Oh, great. First of all, congratulations to the Long Island Women in Tech. I mean, 600 members. I saw this post on LinkedIn where Samantha Seymour said, look at this network, they're doing great things. And your motto of help us make a difference is a great one, and we're so honored to have you all tonight to discuss this topic. So I was talking to the other lady from the Microsoft Women's Organization. It takes a village to push and move the needle. Like you said, this is my book. I should have bought copies and given them as gifts tonight. But the concept is that just like we have the Internet of Things, the Internet of Women is this new network that we're forming thanks to technology and thanks to all the things we do in that field. It's an equalizer, and it's allowing women who work from home to be independent and to be. So we recount the stories and struggles of women from across the world, including in Afghanistan, where they're not even allowed to go to school, and all these success stories of women. This is also a new initiative here at NYIT, and we invite you to many more events, mentoring sessions, a career fair on March 12th in New York City, and other events that we have in here for Long Island. What you see is our mentoring session. It was a seed mentoring session where students could, where the mentors introduced themselves and their careers. You had authors, media, personalities, marketing, personalities, and also, of course, IT leaders, and the students could hop from one to another for the time for 10 minutes. We also, just like the Long Island Women in Tech, we do outreach, and we help the youth here on Long Island. We have a representative of the Teen Hack Long Island, Wesley Perkament, who is the co-founder and president of the group. We hosted the first 24-hour hackathon ever on the island last spring with 200 high school students. Some of them came from Maryland, from Massachusetts, Pennsylvania. We had, it was a great event. And this, 2 weeks ago, November, we hosted 300 of them. It was an amazing occasion. And you see, they had for good. You were interviewed on TV, and I think the reporter didn't understand that, but hacking for good. So they worked on wellness apps, on emotion detection apps, and also dark patterns detection. Workshops were held in conjunction with the industry. So it's just, and I know that you also sponsor and support Kids Web. So this is amazing and exciting. And thanks to Wesley, we also pushed the event to high school girls, Girls Scouts and other organizations, Girls Inc., so that participation went up from 15 to 20% in the spring to now 30% girls. And there was a panel for women leaders during the hackathon. So you're all experts here. I'm not here to lecture about DevOps, but it's an interesting concept. It's basically an approach and a philosophy that combines software development with operations. And it started, or it builds with the senior VP. It builds on agile. But rather than combining developers with customers, this one is organizational, and it's combining development with the IT within the organization. And if you add up the two, you go from developer to customer. So why I talked about the book and about the Long Island Women in Tech, because it takes culture change. It takes culture change to embrace this new approach. Transformation and organizational structure and bringing people together to think differently, breaking silos is not an easy thing. It takes thinking about the middle. What is my goal, and how do I fill in the gaps? But that would never happen if you don't know what the goal is in the first place. And it applies not just to DevOps, it applies to many other things, including academia. I heard that there were some professors here from other institutions. We constantly do this and attempt to do it, because our ultimate goal is continuous improvement. Yes, it takes all these different components, including team building, games, whatever can be done to bring disparate teams together, constant communication, and and then, of course, you start with the development, and you want to end up with the delivery. And the building blocks, as we know, start with the architecture. Is what I'm building deployable? So when I'm building it, I have to keep that in mind. Can it be modified? That's an important characteristic. Am I testing it enough before it launches? And am I monitoring on the progress? Automation, there are some of you, I think, on the panel who are experts at automation. To virtual machines, containerization, and other needs. And of course, the end is deployment and delivery. But of course, we learn from each other. And to me, adapting best practices, forming user groups, attending events like these are ideal steps that can exchange ideas. Thank you. have a few questions, which I thought each pair could ask each other, and then tell us what your answers are if you work in DevOps. So first, is there a barrier to implementing this approach in your workplace, and is there a growth opportunity that you may consider pursuing? Of course, the panel will help you with number 2 and number 1, but I wanted to kick the evening with these 2 questions. So it's up. It's my way of engaging the audience. So why don't you now discuss?
So I think what we want to do now is actually just hear from a few people in the audience.
Where I have the mic. A barrier that we were talking about was that the organization may not understand the value proposition. So they might not understand why they need to invest the time and effort to making a cultural change and process change.
So you can define it.
Exactly.
At the top. At the bottom also. Okay. At the top. Okay.
One of the things that I've seen over and over and over trying to introduce DevOps to an organization is what I kind of feel like is called cultural inertia, is the reluctance to change, or reluctance to do new things. We've always done it this way. I've seen that a lot of times.
So one of the things that I have seen, and we have been trying to implement DevOps in our organization, is even though we have the buy-in from top and bottom, some of the struggles that we face is there is no standard to follow. There is no protocol for people to initially implement. So if there are missing guidelines to follow, there have to be some guidelines in place before we can actually roll over this whole DevOps thing to the whole organization. Without that, they feel very lost. What to do next?
One of the things that we had an issue with it was a large organization, we would have multiple DevOps groups. So it was not necessarily implementing it, but implementing it consistently. Yeah, exactly. So similar to what we would have with a PMO, where you would have multiple PMOs, and if you don't have one overarching PMO, or it becomes complicated because everybody has a different idea of what it should do, and then it flex with.
That's a great insight. I think there's 2 things there. One, why have a DevOps group, right? Maybe because of standards, and sometimes there's contention in the marketplace that says maybe we shouldn't have a group dedicated to DevOps. Maybe they should be an enabling group, right? The DevOps enablement team. They help you get acclimated to tooling and so on. But now I'm going to steal the thunder of the panel. Thank you so much, Nada. I really appreciate you taking the time. Nada has another event to run to, so that was really great. I loved how she engaged the audience. A lot of times you sit in these panel discussions, you never get involved. And now we know there are many people in the audience that actually already are trying to do this stuff or have seen the pain. So we can actually talk a little bit on the panel about the pain. I did introduce myself in a basic sense earlier. My name is Stefana Muller. I'm the head of Long Island Women in Tech, but I am not alone in this event, so I'll just do a quick round robin to say thank you to everyone who's here and all of our volunteers. We have sponsors. Sponsors come out because they really felt that this is a great topic to focus on, and I love that. So thank you, NYIT, for all your support today and putting this together, getting Nada here. She's a definitely in-demand person. Thank you, Entrust Data Card. And Diana is here on the panel from Entrust Data Card, and you'll learn more about them. And thank you to CompTIA, and I see Teresa up there, so if you have any questions on certification, she's right here. So let's introduce the panel. I know you guys have been waiting with bated breath for our panel. I'm so excited to have them here. I know each and every one of them in different ways, so my introduction will be a bit of bio, but a little bit of Stefana knows them because. Does that make sense? Make it a little fun. So first I'm going to start with Karine, because I just have it in order of the one I secured first. Karine Kircher is the CEO and founder of DevOps Advisors. She helps companies profit by eliminating busy work, streamlining processes, and creating end-to-end automation. This is exactly what DevOps is here to do, and she enables teams to do it by providing those things you called standards and such, but also making them sound right? To each individual. She translates, I feel. Every time she tells me a story about what she's done in the field, she goes, this is how I had to translate for that person. I had to make it easy for them to get them started. I met Kareen on the best platform ever right now, is LinkedIn. It's funny because I thought I knew a lot of women in DevOps, but no one lived near Long Island. So I had to search for more, and I was really excited to meet Kareen, and now she's my good friend, and we're going to be hopefully doing business together. The next person on our panel is Rashawn Smith. Rashawn, come on up. Rashawn Smith is currently an associate consultant at Red Hat. She has a passion for increasing the presence of underrepresented groups in the tech industry, and she frequently attends and mentors people at different tech conferences. She serves on the Fellows Board of Advisors at Black Computer, and she recently joined Tech Pipeline Initiatives by this CUNY system. I also met Rashawn on LinkedIn, but Rashawn also, it called out to me, she's newer into the industry, but she's so in depth in the industry, meaning though she's maybe had a few years, I mean, I'm old, guys, we had this conversation already, but she's also had so much depth in her career by starting coding clubs, by doing things hands-on, and now is working at Red Hat as an associate consultant. So thank you, Rashawn. The next person on our panel is Diana Gruen, and I've known Diana for probably 20 years. And we don't both want to admit that, but we worked together at CA Technologies many moons ago. She is a senior product marketing manager at Entrust Data Card, where she bridges technology with business and industry to action by creating compelling content that helps markets understand intrinsic product value created by software architects and engineers. So she pretty much translates the tech into stuff you guys can understand. And I'm not saying just you guys, but everybody can understand, which is really helpful. And that's what she did for me back at CA Technologies, so it's very nice. I also invited her on this panel because it's interesting to think of marketing as part of DevOps. Does anyone have a marketing team as part of their DevOps team? I do. Okay, and she'll give us that spin of how that works, right? I hope, right? All right, next we have Matthew Titmus. Matt, come on up. He's our token white male, in case you were wondering where that person came from. I know Matt is embarrassed by that, but it's okay, Matt. We welcome you. I love Matt. He's great. He actually welcomed me into his meetup group. He's a senior site reliability engineer at Flatiron Health in New York City. He's been in the tech industry, I love this one, long enough to have made all the mistakes and even discover a few new ones. Yes, I get you. They're the Matt Titmus. Don't do the Matt, okay? So Matt also runs the New York City chapter of Coffee Ops. If you're ever in the Flatiron area of New York City on a Thursday morning, come meet Matt and myself and maybe sometimes Victoria, and we'll be talking DevOps and having coffee together for an hour and a half. Sound good? All right, and if you're not in that area and you want to still get involved, definitely reach out to Matt because he's also involved in DevOps Days New York City, which is one of the bigger DevOps conferences globally. Matt has a very impressive resume. I'm going to move on. I will move on to Victoria Geronimo, who just recently, thank you to Victoria for coming on the panel, just recently secured the space on the panel. I've known Victoria for about 6 months, and she works on the same team as me. What is it, 4 months? It's like 4 months. Okay, I feel like I've known her for years. Victoria runs product management for security at our consulting company. And the interesting spin on that, or it's not even a spin, but the things that Victoria and I speak about, because I run DevOps, is how do we integrate Dev, Sec, and Ops together, which is Dev, Security, and Operations together in a full pipeline view, both tooling, culture change, and process change to make that happen. And we are actually going to be working on that a lot more in depth at reInvent in 2 weeks. Is anyone going to reInvent? No. No, I don't know anyone from Long Island who's going to reInvent. Okay. AWS reInvent. All right. I would love it if each of you would go down the line, that just to prime the audience with what does a day in the life look like for you? And maybe it's only 2 sentences, right? 2 or 3 sentences, nothing more, because then we'll spend all day about what my day looks like. But really kind of give an idea of how your day in the life ties into the DevOps culture or the DevOps methodology. Does that make sense? Matt, why don't we start with you because you're right here.
Cool. So I am a site reliability engineer, which is basically an implementation of DevOps, according to some people. And I spend my day working on automation where I can, a lot of operational work. Spend the other half of my day working on tooling to facilitate people's days, and then another half of helping people learn how to use and how to work together, how to communicate, etc. Very busy.
It's a good day. And then on Thursday, 2 hours of his day is coffee hours. He drinks coffee and talks.
Hi, I'm Corinne Kircher, and thank you first of all to Nada, Anid, Dr. Anid, and the staff here, as well as Anna, for inviting me to this event. I'm really happy to be here. I find that the best thing to do is to listen to people, because they've been struggling with what they're struggling with for a long time, and they need some time just to be heard so that we can understand how to best help them. Because DevOps can be different things to different people. And where one organization needs help, another organization may have been several steps beyond that ladder. And and just because somebody has taken a few steps with DevOps, it doesn't mean that they're any less needing of help. Or even a company that has already implemented DevOps as far as they can go, a high performance team can always get better. So I find that there might be a myriad of things to do, convincing people, speaking English to the business, helping them to understand why they should spend their money on it, that it's not just a fad. So that's part of it. So sometimes some days are 75% navigating and convincing people, and the other 25% may be technical, because the technical piece can be done really quickly. But how quickly will you get agreement to get that done? So that's kind of how it goes.
Once again, thank you for inviting me to this panel. So I would say I'm a consultant living a developer's life, really. So I would spend most of my mornings either in Scrum calls or meeting with the business, trying to figure out what the needs are, translating them to what we can actually do. And then from late morning to mid to late afternoon, I would spend that either coding or implementing those features, or reviewing pull requests from different team members, wondering why a build didn't build, and troubleshooting that, or dealing with defects. And then towards the end of the day, I would try to learn something new, or try to figure out a new feature that I could pitch to the team to say that we would benefit from implementing it. That's kind of my day.
Very productive day.
So thanks for having me on the panel. So as the product owner for Stated Card, collaboration is definitely a big part of my role in facilitating those lines of communications between product and engineers and sales and marketing to help facilitate engagement with our product. So all the things involved in that whole communicating the need, goal, the build, and then facilitating user engagement is a big part of how I spend my day in various ways. But I know we only have so I'm a product manager for security and compliance, and a typical day for me is really centered on what existing products are we offering, how can we make them more efficient or improve the process, how can I develop materials that can enable our engineering team and our sales team to want to sell it better and then to deliver the product better. The other part of my position is really trying to see what customer pain points are when it comes to security and how to develop a product that is efficient and actually help them. Especially in the security space right now, there are a ton of products that address very, very granular issues, and you can have companies that have over 200 cybersecurity vendors doing different things. So a lot of what I'm doing is trying to anticipate customer need and how to deliver it.
Thank you guys, I appreciate it. So now you get an idea of what they actually do, right? And now we're going to go into DevOps in general, right? So focusing on the definition of DevOps. By the way, if anyone wants to read the definition, you are coming. Okay. Come on, it's so exciting. Just hold up your phone. So the definition as I define it, and everyone gets to define it, that's my favorite part about DevOps, right? Is that it is a set of cultural values and organizational practices that improve business outcomes by increasing collaboration and feedback between business stakeholders, development, QA, IT operations, and security. And I think one of the key things that you consider when you're trying to quote unquote implement DevOps is that it is an evolution of the company culture, automation and tooling, processes, collaboration, measurement systems, and organizational structure. So I'd like to ask Karine to talk a little bit about that. I know that we all are going to just add a little bit to that definition. You had mentioned that you really have a feeling for all of that, the end-to-end, and I call it the comms model, different culture, what is it, agile, L, lean, M is measurement, and S is sharing. Good job, Matt. Thank you for that help. So what are your thoughts on that, Karine?
I think first and foremost, we need to sell people on the benefits of DevOps and allow people to get started however they can. When you talk about organizational change, you may not yourself have the power to do that. But the approach that I've taken sometimes is saying, well, it takes me X amount of time to do this because I have a script. Would you like it? Would you like to try it and see if you can use it in your environment? And you do that little bit of a buy-in. And in one place, I created a script that took someone's work from 45 minutes to literally 5 minutes. What she does with the extra time, that's not my problem, right? So you eliminate that kind of burden for someone, especially on a day that you're hard pressed to do other things, to do other deliverables, so that it becomes clear that you're delivering something. But sometimes people are afraid that the automation piece that comes with DevOps will eliminate their job. They may be technical, that perhaps what they're working on is something that's legacy, and they're like, oh, so am I irrelevant anymore? Does anybody need me anymore? And part of that has to do with, well, when everything shakes out, where are you going to be? What's life going to be like for you next? So I think all of that is part of the conversation because it brings down the anxiety level, and if you do that, then people are more willing to listen to you because you're able to say, well, here's how it can benefit you. And it's not just about how it helps the company, but here's how it can make you look good. Here's how this can be something that, even if you're not the person who created it, but now you're the person who's running that. So you have some understanding, and that brings up your education level, hands-on, real-life experience. So then it's a little bit easier for me to not just depend on myself to be the advocate. Now I have like little pockets of people in the organization who can advocate for it also. And it's like it's a more natural groundswell of support for doing more of it. And you don't have to convince everybody. You just have to help a few people in the right spots and let that take off on its own.
I'd like to ask Matt to add a little bit to that as well. Thank you, Karine. Specifically around the maturity level of DevOps, right? So one of the things is, we talk about this a lot at Irmina, but so what makes you say that you did it? That I have implemented DevOps, and then you put this, right?
Okay, so you gave me the hardest question.
Come on, you want the answer? It's right here.
Well, no, one of the things that really stands out with DevOps is, and I think you highlighted this pretty well, is that people are concerned, oh, it's going to change things. I have to change everything. I'm not going to have a job. My job is going to change. But one of the really important points about DevOps in general is that it's not a zero-sum game. You're improving things not just for the customer, not just for management, but you're improving the day-to-day life of the engineers as well too. Everybody's lives get better. If you create products that can auto-remediate and you create products that are more reliable, you're not getting paged at 3 o'clock in the morning, which happens a lot, you know. Yeah. And one of the things, you read the definition of DevOps, and while it's technically correct, I think it's very incomplete. And I think you actually made a very good point. How do you actually get there? One of the things I like to say is if you Google like pillars of DevOps, there's like, there'll be a million articles, the 3 pillars of DevOps, the 5 pillars of DevOps, the 7 pillars of DevOps. I mean, DevOps really likes pillars, apparently. It's one thing. There's really one point to DevOps, and it was something that we had up on a slide before, is continuous improvement. That's why we monitor things, so we know what to improve. That's why we automate things, so the human hands, which are inconsistent and error-prone, don't break things the 900th time we've shelled into a server and installed this thing. We can just write a script to do the same thing. People's lives get better. Everybody's lives get better.
Thank you. That was great. So I think there's a lot of there's one big question. I think that there's a few people on the panel that might be able to answer this. If you the 3 on the end, if you haven't indicated you want to answer this, I'm going to call you anyway. So I guess the question I have is, who is part of this DevOps thing? And you know, it's really hard to put a finger on what it is, because it's not ITIL, right? It's not process improvement in that way. It's everything. It's culture, process, and tooling and automation, right? So who in the organization becomes a part of this? And I think, Diana, maybe you could start, because coming from the marketing perspective, it gives a different perspective on this.
Yeah, so that's right. So as a product marketer, I'm looking at this from the customer perspective. So from the customer perspective, who are the stakeholders? And so for us, you know, obviously I'm one of the stakeholders as far as communicating and getting communication by whatever technology we create. But also product is very much involved in this. Our leadership, we find leadership, so they're definitely a stakeholder, and certainly engineers themselves, right? So we have customers. This is what they're asking for. What can we do to create this? So it's really again opening up those lines of communication and collaborating, understanding what the needs are, bringing those stakeholders that I mentioned to the table, and then working on delivering.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Victoria to talk a little bit about how security gets intertwined into this topic, this area.
Yeah, so DevSecOps is a big buzzword right now, and that essentially is born out of the problem that people have where, okay, so you've implemented DevOps, it's going great, but by the time you get to the testing at the end of the process, there's all these bugs in the code. And security team, if you even have a security team, reviews it, sends it back, reviews it, sends it back. By the time maybe one cycle of code goes and security team sending it back, dev has already completed another thing that's dependent on it, and sort of like screwed up, for lack of a better term. So DevSecOps is, how do we make this process more efficient? How do we build security into different steps? So security is brought to the table, and we were talking about this at our meetup. There's a lot of people who haven't really figured out how to do it well yet. It sounds good because you can use the exact thing with DevOps, but actually doing that whole process is tough, and it's something that we're still trying to figure out. And I don't know if this is the forum to give my 2 cents on how you do that, but so cultural transformation is the biggest thing. At my last company that I worked for, I was head of InfoSec, and when I was talking to the developers, they didn't even know what OWASP Top 10 is. And coming from the security world, it's OWASP Top 10 is just like a given. It's like day one you learn about OWASP. And so a lot of DevOps is this cultural transformation and training transformation. It's not just taking a course in Python and Ruby and knowing how to script Terraform. It's also being aware of what are the most common exploits. How do I code around them, or how do I prevent that from happening? So that's the best way from the get-go is train your developers in security, have them know CIS benchmarks, and again, OAuth Top 10 is a great free resource. And then also it's putting in code checks throughout the DevOps lifestyle. So it's not just testing it at the end, it's GitHub, for instance, there's a little checkbox that you can have that is the person who pushes the code makes a pull request cannot actually push the code too. And then you can, run a Jenkins job to make sure like it goes out to a static analysis testing, so the code is being tested before it's actually deployed. Also putting dynamic testing and dynamic code analysis in it. Those are my top 3 recommendations.
She's got 12 more. Don't worry, we're going to do it we have a webinar coming up. I just scheduled it while we were here. Rashawn, I actually wanted to add you into this conversation because you work in dev. That's really your role right now. Though you understand the concept, not the concept, but the need for DevOps and that cycle. And we talk culture on this side and with Diana, and then we walked into the DevOps pipeline without explaining the pipeline itself. Maybe you can give some commentary on what a DevOps pipeline is and how a developer contributes to it.
Yeah. So it's interesting because my beginning into the tech world, I started off with DevOps as a part of my role. I never really started off understanding what it meant to model DevOps. So,
good for you. All of us had to suffer with no automation.
But in my consulting role, we were trained to understand the importance because we will have clients that have never interacted with them. We have to be able to show them that it is that. But like I mentioned before, it's almost I almost thought of DevOps as like a part of being a developer. Like in order to be a developer, you need to have these DevOps tools. Even when you look at jobs, like when I was looking for jobs, that required you to, or they would recommend that you have like Git or like Jenkins experience because it's a part of being a developer. You're always interacting with these tools. And it's cool that being a developer, you're in the middle ground. You're in between operations and the customer. And I think it's been interesting working with the business and, for example, in Jira, which is like a user story management tool. You have plugins for GitHub or Bitbucket or whatever source management tool you're using for your code. So even though they don't understand the technical aspects of DevOps, they can see that code was merged. They understand that we're working in sprints. So, okay, we can see that that's what you're working on. For that user story, you kind of get a sense of not the technical aspects of DevOps, but how it allows for everything to flow the way it is. You want me to go into like the details?
That was great. I think it was a great commentary on how developers see it from that inherent space. And I'm actually really excited to hear that people are starting jobs learning that DevOps is inherent, right? That by the way, you have to build code that's testable. That by the way, you have to actually understand the security gets involved well in advance before you push your code. All of those things, those tenets that we as developers in the past did not learn, right? Because we were just coders. Now it's different, right? Which is it's definitely refreshing. It's been 10 years in DevOps by this time. What do you think, Beth? Do you think it's refreshing that her perspective is different?
It gives me some hope.
He's got hope.
I started in a very different world, and I think you said it very well, Savannah. And you were just code monkeys, really. Like, go build this feature. Let's not go back and think about it. We just keep on building new ones, and once things start falling apart, we'll start over and do something else. So I'm really refreshed to hear that perspective, and that's how you started out. I know that's something I spend an awful lot of time at my company and in meetups working with people who are just coming into the industry, do copy ops and all these other things. And I do hear that kind of thing again and again and again. We have to do DevOps, have to do things the right way. But the questions do keep coming up though. Yeah, but what does that actually mean? How do I actually do that?
What is it?
A secret?
Yeah.
I can't tell you here.
Okay. We have a consulting practice all around it. Sure.
There goes my pitch.
Stefana, I do have to say, I come from where she's coming from, and I'm just learning in this panel right now that it like a big issue is implementing DevOps. Like I was like, oh, I just thought it was
Natural to everyone.
very intuitive. And coming from a compliance background, all of the compliance standards are like, let's look at the SDLC cycle, and it's all DevOps is now encoded in law, basically.
That's great to hear. I actually wanted to add a little bit from Diana because she had a good perspective about misconceptions surrounding DevOps. So Diana, would you add a little bit of commentary about the misconceptions? Because I think a lot of people, there are a few of them, just a few.
Yeah, so one of the things thinking about security that I found in my research, really understanding DevOps from the use case and persona perspective, is that so one of the things that came up for me in my research is that there's this misconception that DevOps is not really interested in security, that they'll, introduce vulnerabilities across the IT ecosystem in the spirit of moving fast. And really, that's just not true. What DevOps wants is to build security into their methodologies, not sidestep it.
They don't want it as a blocker in their process, right?
Correct. And it's just interesting that you say that, because what we do at Interest Data Card with cryptography, we really sit at that friction point between dev and ops. So things like encryption and cryptography and authentication are all those words that really slow down that DevOps process. So our work really is, how do we overcome that? How do we overcome that friction point?
I'd just like to add to that, like I totally agree with you, because when you talk to any developer, do you think any of them want somebody to say, yeah, I was able to hack into your code, things like they do want.
Every developer wants that, right? Reem, we want to add something to that?
Yes, I just realized how interesting it is that I'm sitting between an ops person and a dev. Because that's literally how my career started. I was that person where my title was a software engineering associate, build engineer, build release engineer. And I literally was between these two forces. And to the business, we were all the same people. And yet amongst each other, we were like, but I'm done coding. It's your job to make sure that you deploy it, like just deploy what I gave you, or give me access to deploy what I want. And here I am, the person who's building it, and sometimes I wear this hat, sometimes I wear this hat, to tell the devs, hey, you need to implement this in your code. Yes, I know it built on your machine, but yes, you also have to add this extra thing, because otherwise they're not going to accept it. And then you have people on the ops side saying, well, the last time we gave you access, you not only did what you said you were going to do, you did something extra. So now we're going to block you. We're not going to let you have that kind of power. And that's part of the resistance. Dev wants to do some things, and infrastructure saying, I want my system to be stable, and you're a threat to my stability. So I don't care about your buzzwords. I want to protect my system. So you have, and then you have people who are the security people now, slowing down everybody. So now they're complaining about security. You're making us do this.
Look at them at the end of the line, right? They're actually like blocking dev from.
So now they become, so security people and other compliance people, they can become the bottlenecks. So now they're slowing me down. I used to be able to turn this around in a week. Now it's taking me 2 weeks because there's this churn, there's this back and forth. So we're like fighting amongst each other, and the business sees all of us as one and the same. So we really need to, like DevOps, trying to break down the silos to be able to understand how the handoff happens and how we can help each other. And helping each other is not something that is detrimental to you, but it's something that actually makes your life and the life of the person downstream from you a little bit easier. So, and that makes everybody look good to the business.
Yeah, something small to add to. I would consider it more of a gap, but something I've noticed, especially like trying to find entry-level jobs, is that DevOps is this thing now, everyone wants it, but not a lot of schools teach this in computer science courses, and that's part of what the CUNY initiatives are doing, to have developers come in and try to teach them these skills. But that's something I've noticed that I don't think many schools have like tried to catch up with that, but I've noticed that as a gap. Yes, all these companies want DevOps skills, but they're not being trained in those skills by the time you graduate. You don't have it.
CompTIA, you've got answers for that?
Yes, Lori.
Lori has answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Why don't we ask?
What would that be? Okay.
So I'm a business owner and a professor. So my question is, what would that be? What should be taught to students that's missing? What is DevOps?
So I took a software development course my junior year, and it was pretty much, we did Scrum, we had all these meetings, we did things in like weekly sprints, but there wasn't a DevOps aspect to that. So if I were to go back and try to redesign that course, it would still be software development with whoever developing in Java or C, but implementing Git this time, having students commit, like using GitHub, having like commit to GitHub, maybe implementing like a tool like Jira that allows them to like learn how to make user stories and figure out the business need and kind of like create everything into features and kind of implement things that way. And then Jenkins is also another tool that will allow them to like deploy to different environments, whether it's like dev, QA, production. So I guess introducing those DevOps tools to the course would be helpful because that's something that I wasn't introduced to in the course, although I learned software development. And as I mentioned now, it seems like DevOps requires a developer in a lot of the jobs. So that would have been helpful for me.
Matt, could you add to that both on the tooling side and a little bit on the cultural aspects that might be able to be taught?
Yes. First, I want to comment very quickly. I was actually a developer 15 years before I was a developer. Anyway, I'm friendly. I'm developer friendly. So one of the things, and also to answer your question as well, in the educational process, you can teach people how to code, you can be developers, you can go to school and learn about operations and IT and all that stuff. But the point at which they meet, now historically developers have been pressured for velocity, build things faster, and operations has been pressured to keep things stable. And those two things were tension. But more recently, there has been an increased understanding that those two things actually meet around reliability. So developers, they want to build reliable software that they can deploy repeatedly the same way, consistently and reliably. And ops folks want to be able to consistently do the same thing and make those services function and self-heal and satisfy all of the functional requirements, right? Latency, throughput, and all that fun stuff. And by giving developers and operations folks this thing to rally around has become a real driving force. That is something I would recommend instilling in people from the very beginning. That your job as a technology professional is to build reliable services. And what's the definition of reliability is user. So SAD users are site reliability engineering.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Lori Carey, and I am the founder and executive director of an organization called We Connect the Dots and Nebula Academy. So Nebula Academy is launching our first boot camp this March and September. We call it a boot camp. It's 6 months. But it is for web developers, and it totally incorporates the DevOps pieces as well as Amazon AWS Cloud Foundations and Cloud Practitioner certification, because we believe exactly. And my background is 35 years in IT, 10 years in Microsoft, and so I've implemented global projects all over the world. And one of the things that I got frustrated with was we're not teaching the kids the skills. We're teaching the theory and concepts, but they don't know how to actually execute on it. So all good, and so it is coming. We're seeing it. We're seeing more people seeing that they have to incorporate this into the learning experience. But the other piece too is we need to also give them real experience, not just learning in the classroom, but actually businesses that will be willing to let students
let students learn on their systems. Because the problem we have with the next piece is getting them employed, right? And people won't hire them because they don't have experience. But how are they going to get experience? We don't give them the opportunities. So it's this whole concept that needs to change. And I'm hopefully breaking that piece.
Thank you. That's a very relevant comment. I appreciate it. And I also wanted to say, she said, we're not teaching these kids. I loved it because I feel like I'm a kid too, and they're not teaching me. I had to read 4 books to know what to do here, right? There's DevOps for Dummies, just recently released about 6 months ago. It's a great one. Accelerate is another. Can anyone on the panel, you want to share some of the books you've read about DevOps that helped you grasp the concepts outside of just the software automation? No one reads books.
I feel like I've talked too much.
It's all right, Matt.
One of the classics is, of course, the Phoenix Project,
Yes.
which tells a wonderful narrative about a very dysfunctional company that sort of discovers its way into DevOps and the transformation that the company experiences in the process. The sequel just came out, the Unicorn Project. Yeah, something like that. Gene Kim, correct. One of the founding minds of the whole DevOps philosophy. And that's one. So highly recommended.
Anyone else on the panel? Any books that have helped you? Well, this book has helped me, but this is a little bit more of a, a related topic. So there's this book entitled Subscribed, and it's written by someone who created Zora, which is a subscription platform, and also he's a former executive at Salesforce. But it's a fascinating read. He gives case study after case study of stories of how companies, large and small, in different organizations, transition to a subscription-based business model, and how they did it, the challenges that they faced. And the reason why I bring this one up is, again, referring back to my research with DevOps, is that they overwhelmingly prefer a subscription-based platform to traditional licensing. So it's a really good book to really understand, maybe how to package your products and how to package your offerings to really support what DevOps is looking for. And another area where I go to kind of get myself up to speed on DevOps, we were talking about everything ops, media ops, right? This big publication company, they have DevOps Anarchist and DevOps.com. They have all sorts of content, podcasts and videos and blogs that you can read that will pretty much answer any question you have about DevOps. So that's a resource that I go to online.
What was the name of that resource?
The umbrella company is Media Ops, but just DevOps.com you can go to.
So we're almost out of time for the panel, but I'd love to take a few more questions from the audience before we break to eat, because there's some great food here. So is there any questions in the audience for our panel?
While you're formulating your questions, I'm a fan of giving people a hands-on experience end to end. That way they can understand it. And particularly with people who have zero tech experience, I love doing workshops like that because I literally walk them through a DevOps scenario. Again, it's about reducing the anxiety level. It's about bringing people that you would not normally think are the usual suspects for DevOps jobs. For example, Diana has a marketing background originally, and then she gradually translated into doing something that is very technical. So there's opportunities for people. I like to say if you have a personality, there's a place for you in technology. So you don't need to be a heads down coder. You don't need to be like really in depth necessarily, because if you work for a very large organization, chances are you're not going to need to be the person who needs to be like me or like any of us here on the panel. You might need to know Confluence. You might need to know Jira, and that is not a heavy learning curve. You don't need any computer science degree, any kind of engineering training to learn that. That's something you can learn hands-on. That's something you can learn in a couple of sittings with someone. And not only that, you can take what you learn, create a portfolio, and then go to your company. Go to somebody in your, let's say you work on the business side, go to someone on the tech team, a project manager, a business analyst, and say, hey, if you're busy, you want to offload some of your work to me, I'll help you. And just like that, somebody can get a little bit of experience with Confluence. And because they do that, then they can start experimenting on their own and take that initiative. And it's something that's a legitimate way of putting that on your resume because they're doing real work at a real company that has those needs. And then you can take the very expensive people here and give them the harder work to do, the harder technical work to do. But this is a way that you can open up opportunities right within your companies for people who are not the usual suspects, technically speaking, and give them something to look forward to. So that's one of the really big benefits that I like to push for, because it's something that you're using something which could be a fad according to some people, but you're giving people real skills that they can implement, and people can feel that right where they are in your company, they're able to make a difference, that they have some opportunity to move forward. So there's a video actually on my website. It's called A General Introduction to Azure DevOps. And I walked somebody who's not technically savvy in that particular piece of technology. She does other things in technology, and she's not a coder, and she's not an infrastructure person. And I walked her through it, and she was able to understand not only the technology, but when does the project manager come in? When does the security person come in? Like, how do they interact with it? And I think it's less than an hour. So it is one thing that you can literally copy because of the subscription model, you can get some of these tools for next to nothing or free during a 2-week period, and you can play with it and then go from there.
Any questions? Oh, great. Okay, I'm going to start with Teresa, and then we'll go this way. Is that okay? Because I know your name. That's what it makes it easy.
Love that you just said that in terms of skill set. So if somebody doesn't have the technical skills, I'm curious across the panel, what skills are you looking for? And would you take a risk hiring them without that checklist of technical skills? So I'd love that you would, but how about the rest of the panel as well?
Yeah, so actually Red Hat is interesting because in their associate consultant position, they set aside like 3 to 6 months of training for everyone. So you just have to come in with really good communication skills, a desire to be a consultant, maybe some exposure to tech, but regardless, like I had almost a year of experience coming in, but I still got the same training in DevOps, software development, and all these cloud technologies as someone that didn't have DevOps or programming background. So I think there are some companies that are starting to do that way, but at Red Hat, they definitely try to gear towards people that might not have the technical experience, but have the passion to want to use them.
So I have a question. So earlier, Diana was speaking to the friction point between dev and ops. Is there a sweet spot between how much security versus usability for the end user?
That's a good question. I think we're always working towards finding that sweet spot. So for us, it's really how do we blend, compliance and security into the, CI/CD pipeline without creating drag. Like, how do we build these features in, the features that InfoSec, let's say, requires, without taxing InfoSec's resources or DevOps sensibility. So this is the work, right? This is the work in progress. It's something that we are, always building.
Victoria, do you want to add to that about decreasing friction in the pipeline?
Yeah, so again, the biggest thing you can do is train your code in security and how to build secure code. That is just something that's almost next to frictionless except for the training time, because then they're just like, oh, I need to do this instead of that. Again, other than that, it's testing the code during the build process. Beyond that, I don't think that's a ton of friction. You guys feel differently. I think it's really important to also remember that security is not just about coding. It's DevOps is like much bigger. A lot of security is also understanding that a breach is probably going to happen at some point, and it's how you react to it. So you shouldn't just be putting it all team to like build perfect code. It's just not going to happen. So I would say this week.
Wait, pause. Did she say that? InfoSec lady said that. Just everyone take that quote. I had to stop. It's recorded. Say it loud for the people in the back.
No, but a lot of old security was like, how do we prevent anyone from getting into our systems and doing any sort of breach? We see humans are humans. Like somebody's gonna open a port and forget to close it one day, and it just happens. So it's not just the sweet spot in terms of DevSecOps is train and do some static analysis, do some dynamic code analysis, and then beyond that, you gotta compare security in a million other ways across the company.
Thank you.
This one was great. Thank you. My career started too long ago in tech, and now I'm on the business side, management consulting. And I've seen a lot of organizations go through the transformation. I'll try and step away from labels, going from classic waterfall methodology to iterative, collaborative, I'll use the word agile. And I know the pain I've seen take years, if not a decade. What I'm curious to know is you have a perspective on DevOps and answering the question of predictability in the business. So, it used to be waterfall. I've got a deadline. Wall Street wants to see a product in market generating revenue on a date. A lot of different cross-functional teams have to deliver technology in one stream. Come in iterative and teams work agile, and they'll tell you, well, we'll figure out what we get in the next scrum. This is what the product is going to have. You don't know when we're going to hit MVP, and there's a lot of variability. I'm just curious if you've seen DevOps as an approach. Help answer the question. Make the CFO calmer, because we need to still hit that date. And it's not just an open checkbook to say, how much can you get done in 2 weeks? I'm just curious.
Well, that's a big question, I guess. So, yeah, originally, many moons ago, Savannah says, there was the waterfall methodology, and somebody would write a big check and say, okay, you have a year, bring me back what I want a year. In more recent years, there have been things like Agile and Scrum designed to course correct, and not just to course correct, but also provide continuous updates as things go along as well too. Scrum and those similar methodologies, they're really not made for developers. They're made for the people who need to know what's going on. They're made for the CFOs and the CTOs to keep track and keep people accountable. Whereas they didn't have that kind of visibility back in the waterfall days. In terms of how to provide that kind of visibility, that's so far I think that's the best system we've come up with so far. Nobody really follows Scrum perfectly. Nobody follows Agile perfectly. Everyone tries to. Nobody does it very well. And I think a big part of it is because nobody. There's a lot of ceremonies involved, big overhead involved, but also because people lose track of the point. The point is to keep the customer informed, to keep the management informed of what's going on, what the blockers are, so on and so forth.
So I want to add to that. As a product manager in DevOps, right? Before this role, I was a product manager in software testing products, right? So I created testing products that sped up the DevOps pipeline. And interestingly enough, one of my big roles was to figure out how to create predictability of what I was delivering, because I had to figure out what to tell the customer in 6 months, and also tell them what my roadmap looks like. I think what has changed because of DevOps is things have gotten out quicker and more reliably and more stable. So even though I may be a little bit wishy-washy on my roadmap, I still have new value being delivered to my customer, and it's value that's not failing. So though it used to in waterfall take me 6 to 9 months, so it used to take me 6 to 9 months to deliver software, and the customer wasn't happy at the end of that. Because of Agile, and I'm checking with the customer every few weeks, right, and telling them what I did, and because of the fact that I'm delivering more value more quickly, they're not even questioning that anymore. Now they're saying, so how fast can you get that out? Oh, you already did? Got it. That's my difference. And I get that there's a very different model from what we used to do. And I remember the 6 to 9 month delivery process and then being beat up afterwards when I didn't deliver what they wanted. I have one more question over here and then we're going to break, okay?
Hello? Okay. Just very quickly, you didn't want to say that dirty word agile, right? Because it has become a dirty word to some people because they can't reliably say, definitely will have that for you. But the thing too is, customers don't always know what they want. They tell you what they want in the beginning. But this process, both DevOps and Agile, allows room for the customer to change their mind or to better refine what it is they want. So at the end, they are getting something better than they originally expected. So that is something which is really important. And tools are not perfect. So that's another opportunity people have in DevOps. Yes, you may have automated one thing, but now you have an opportunity because the tooling is not perfect. The DevSecOps tools, things like SonarQube, things like the other tools that you can use to check on code, they're not perfect. They may have false positives. So that now gives somebody, if you like to code or if you like to script, it gives you an opportunity to now fill in the blanks that those tools can't do. And if you're on the non-technical side, then you can translate, if you have a personality, you can translate these gaps to the customer and help them understand, yes, you know, the tool may be limited, but it's continuously being improved. And one of the ways that it can be improved is by people who were previously doing all these things manually, now they can create a higher performance level because where the tool, you know, the commercial tool falls flat, you're able to step in and create value there.
Okay, so 2 really quick questions. One was, can you think that you last worked in one where any kind of technical skills you can try to leverage that person?
Yes, the videos on my website. There's a couple of flyers of mine on the table. They're both different flyers. Take both. It has my website. You can look for the blog section, and it's called A General Introduction to Azure DevOps. And the other tool that I think is very easy for people to learn, and I actually I've done workshops on that. And I can send you the handout, and you can work on it yourself. It's Confluence. And you can build something, you can create a little portfolio, and if anybody in your company has Confluence, go ask them, hey, I'd love to help you. If you have extra work, like, can I work on this also? And your name gets to be in the history of it, and you're part of the project, even in a way that's informal, because sometimes if you want to get ahead, you have to figure out ways to insert yourself into the process, because those opportunities are not necessarily going to come to you. If you're somebody who is on the technical side or the non-technical side, they'll look at your resume and say, well, you don't really fit here. But technical people always have more work than they can handle. So find one of those people and offer to be of service, and that's one way you can get that experience.
And the second question is actually so I actually used to go to Stony Brook for computer science, and I've also just now graduated from a boot camp. So we haven't done anything about DevOps at all, whereas you previously stated that you actually grown with DevOps. So what have you seen, like how fast have you been able to contribute to your company as opposed to a student who has never been introduced to DevOps?
Actually, so I didn't learn DevOps when I graduated, so it was something that I learned in my first job, which was at a startup. I will say something else that helped me learn DevOps was attending hackathons. So during my senior year, I remember attending hackathons, and like that's where I got the experience of like using Git, and also like in October, they had Oktoberfest and Circle CI, which is a DevOps tool. They had this event that they pretty much taught you how to use their platform as well. So I think hackathons helped me out, but also on the job. I would say You mean in terms of just getting a job in the or
Is it possible, besides you get the job and then actually being able to start?
oh, okay. I would say first of all, just be honest, flat out honest about what you know and what you don't know. That will save you a lot of time, and they want to help you become a contributor. So they're gonna tell you what you need to know or give you resources. So I remember my first job, I had like some questions like, how did I get this job? I was there about this job, sort of feeling. And they were just like very open to helping me. Like, okay, this is Jenkins, this is Jira, this is how you use it. And I think I saved myself time and the company's time just saying what I didn't know and then learning that rather than pretending like I knew the whole time. And then when it was time to deliver something, I delivered nothing because so I would say just be honest and just continue to ask people on the job. They will always be willing to help you, but they should always be willing to help you. And you should that should help you grasp it. Yeah, just be honest about what you know and seek help.
Find a lady like this lady over here and the stuff she doesn't like to do, pick it up, fix it, reinvent it, and then you'll make yourself very useful because that'll open up opportunities for you too.
She did mention before documentation. That's a thing that developers never have time to do, but it's always needed and it's always valued when people do it. So that's always a good way to start because you can also like, it's not a job that would be given to you if you sign yourself, say, hey, I'm willing, then I choose an initiative. And that's something as well that can help you.
I made a whole career on that, just letting you know that's what product management does. We write down what people tell us to do, and then we tell the other people, and that's it. We should hold you a forum on that.
Now, and
Well,
I develop new products. And
yeah.
look at Stefana's Confluence page and go, what did Stefana do?
Yeah, she reads my Confluence pages. I swear that's what we do. All right. Well, guys, I don't want to run out of time in the room. We have to get going, and I really appreciate all your time. Thank you so much to the panel. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to the audience. Guys, this is the time, not for you to run out the room. This is the time to network. And we will have some great food here that Bonnie has provided for us and our sponsors have purchased. Thank you, CompTIA and Trust Data Card. I would love for you to stay around, network, drop your card in a hat. I think we have a bucket, and we're going to have 2 raffles in just about 10 minutes. To stay around. Panel, if you could just stay here for 1 minute, that's okay. If you could just stay here for 1 minute so that we can take pictures, and that's that. Kareem? Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
Just wanted to say real quick, the copy of my book is outside so you can come through it, but the ebook version is free, so you can grab that from